Hey guys, Omerko here, self-taught web developer, and in this video we will work with a table component from Angular material. Here we will set up whole component with this dynamic data that you can see, and on top of that we will add up this search or a filter functionality. So for example, here if I would search for lithium, you can see that the data in a table will also be removed sort of, because we are searching only for specific data in our table. This search will also work backwards, so basically whenever I remove the character, the search will also do its thing automatically. So everything that you can see here on a screen won't be hard-coded, the data is dynamic, and this search functionality is also dynamic through Angular material component that you will see soon. There is one thing that I would like to mention before I start this tutorial. Next to YouTube, I am also publishing whole courses and series on SKILLSHARE as well. So there you can find many different courses that you can watch. Link to my SKILLSHARE profile you will find down in the description of this video, and also if you don't have your own profile on SKILLSHARE, you will have also affiliate link down in the description so you can sign up and start using SKILLSHARE for free. First of all, I will generate the component that I will use to render my table. So here I will use ng, g for generate, c for component, and I will generate my component in components/table. Once the component is generated, we can open up our app.component.html file. Here I do have all of my components that we worked previously. I will hide this stepper component from the last video. If you wish to watch that video, you will have a link down in the description of this one. And after the stepper, I will add table comment with app table component that we just generated. And here I will also add end of table. Well, I mistyped a bit. Table, now it's better. Next to adding this component, we must visit our app.module.ts file and import table module, so we could use table components and attributes from Angular material. First of all, here I will move my table component that I generated to a tab outside of these material components. And here now I can import mat table module, and I will import that from @angular/material/table. Also be sure to pass this mat table module down in imports array, and with that we can surely use table itself. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, we won't just create the table with some hard-coded HTML markup, but we will create a dynamic table and use a table component from material. So for that we will also need to create some kind of data. So here in my table.component.ts file, I will just paste some data here, these periodic elements, and you can do the same. Pause the video and you can also rewrite these periodic elements, or you can create your own dummy data as you wish. What is important here to know, if you are creating your own dummy data, well, here each of these properties like position, name, weight and symbol for me will be my own columns in a table. So for each of the property I will have one column. So what I will do also, after my periodic elements, I will create displayed columns property, which will be the type of string array, because I will just use strings inside. So here array of strings, and each of the strings will be basically names for my columns. So first of all position, then I will have name, then I will have weight, and also I will have symbol. Now when we create our dynamic table from material, we will be able to render all of the columns based on these displayed columns, and also, for example, for the position column, we will render just the data from position properties, so 1, 2, 3 to 10, right? And same goes for all other columns as well and other data that we have here. But with this now we can just move to our table.html file here and create our table. First of all, in this HTML, I will create the div and use style property on it with width of 900 pixel and margin will be 50 pixel top and bottom and auto for left and right, so I could center my table in my center of my screen, right? And inside we can simply use a table element, which is HTML5 table element. What is important here to know, we won't use that table heading, table body, and also those table rows, table headings and data. We will use those, but we will set up those with material itself. So in a background material we'll know how to use those properly. First of all, for my table here, I will pass few attributes. For example, I can style my table to have a width of 100%, which means that the table will take, well, full width of 900 pixels. Then I need to specify that this table will be my own, well, data table, well, also material table. So here I can use the mat table attribute to specify that this table belongs to a material. And if you wish to pass dynamic data to the table, you must use this data source. And to this data source, we must pass something. So for my example here, that something will be my periodic elements because I wish to render the data from that array. So periodic elements will go here. For you, you can use your dummy data or a real data if you are using some data from a real website, real API. But now what is important, that in this table, we must specify each of the columns that we will have. So here, we won't use that table row, table data now, but we will use element called ng container. This ng container will dynamically render content based on properties and attributes that we pass to it. So first of all, I will pass one attribute here to this ng container, and the attribute will be mat column def for definition. Here we will define a column that we wish to present in this container. And for me, the first column is position column. So copy this here and paste it paste position to this definition of a column. Next to this, the column itself will have a heading and also the data inside. So what I can do is create now that table heading, and here I can pass also multiple attributes. For example, I can pass mat header cell to present that this column, this heading will be the heading of a cell, of this column. And also I can pass here directive of star mat header cell definition. And this here doesn't need to be set to anything, but this way we are using this directive, and later if you wish to integrate, for example, sorting, it will basically automatically know that when you click on a position column, it should sort by the position from top to bottom or from bottom to top, ascending or descending. And inside of this heading now, we can just pass the value that should be inside of that column, inside of the heading of the column. I will pass simply just not $, but the hash to present a number, because this is our position, so 1, 2, 3 and so on. And now when you are using the table data for a table, you won't pass table data outside of this container. You are still working with this column, this position column, right? So next to the heading, I will use td for table data. And inside, I will now present mat cell. So now this table data presents a cell of a data, and this here presents a header of that cell. And what can we do here now? Similarly that we did for our mat header cell definition, here we can use a directive of mat cell definition. Now here we will set some value. You see, this mat cell definition will pull the element that we wish to work with, and based on that element we will be able to render data or do something with that data inside of this table data element. For example, for me, I will create here a let of element because I'm working with periodic elements. So everything that should go here will be one element. So now inside of this table data, I can property bind my element, and inside I can bind my position. This means that this column will render all of these elements, and it will hold the positions of 1, 2, 3 and so on and so on. And at the top of that column we will have a headline for that column, which will present just this hash. So what you can do now is basically copy this and paste it multiple times and change it for your different columns that you will have. So I will copy this 3 more times because I have 3 columns more. Now I just need to update these columns. So my second column is everything is about the name of the element. So here now, column definition would be positioned by the name. This here is okay, this here is okay. The title, the heading for my column will be just the name. Met cell definition can be element again, but here now I will use element.name. Next one, let's go into our TypeScript, it's weight. So again, let's change the third one. So column definition will be weight. Here the heading will be weight. And also what I need to render is element.weight. And finally, I have my symbol. So this is the last column, symbol here. Then for a heading it will go, well, it will be symbol. And here symbol as well. Now we do have our headings and our data. But you can see here that we don't have our rows. There is one neat thing that we can do with this table to render dynamic rows as well. That means that as long as we have data, in my example there is 10 entries of data, 10 objects of data, right? I should render those rows. So basically in my example, my table should have 10 rows. One row will go for one object of data, right? So let's create those dynamic rows as well. First of all, we need to render the row also for headlines, which means that, yeah, next to these 10 rows of data, we will have one row for our displayed columns. So that is why also we created these displayed columns as well. So let's down below after our ng container. This is not important where you will put your rows. You can put it at the top, at the bottom. Usually it is at the bottom, but you can use it as you wish. Material will know how to handle that. So here I will create now my first table row, and let's pass some attributes. First attribute will be met header row. This means that this row is specific to headers, which are all these th elements. And next to that, I can pass a directive of met header row. Well, not cell definition, but a row definition. Because now we are not working with a cell or a column, we are working with the row itself. And inside of this definition, I will just render my displayed. Let me copy those from my TypeScript, it is safer that way. I will use my displayed columns. So now, this table row will go into my property of displayed columns. It will say like, okay, I have 4 columns. I have position, name, weight, symbol, which means that I will create the row with the 4 columns inside. And each of those columns will have its own header of a table header. So for the first one, it will be just this hash. For the second one, it will be name. For the third one, it will be weight. And for the fourth one, it will be symbol. Now, next for this table row for my headers, I need also one for my data. So here I will use met row now, not met header row. So we are working with the normal row here from a table, and directive here is called met row definition, like this. Here what we can do now, we can specify the row itself. So for example, one object of data will be one row. So when we loop through those data, we will get the row back. So here I will create a let of row, and also I will need to pass display, well, my displayed columns. That way, when it loops through the row, like through my one object of data, it will create the row and it will know which columns it also needs to create based on the columns that we have and also the columns that we will pass here. So we can use here a columns property and just set it equal, well, not set it equal, but set it to be displayed columns as we did here at the top. Inside of this table row, we don't need to do anything. And this should be pretty much it. We have all of our dynamic columns and all of our dynamic rows. We have our data and displayed columns as well. If you would visit your local host, you should have your own table. You can see that we didn't need to create any hard-coded HTML for this table, but we were just able to create some dynamic data and pass those data into material, and material will handle that on its own. Now about that search at the top. So about the search that we need to create, well, I will create a separate element for that, for my form, basically for my input field where I will search, but also that search result will be passed into the material itself. So material will automatically do the search for us based on all columns. So we don't need to worry about that. The reason why I'm creating search here and not pagination or a sort, well, we worked with pagination and sort a bit earlier in this series, and you will have links linked down in the description of this video, so you can quickly look at those videos, and also if you wish to integrate those with your own table, you can easily set up those to work with your own table. It's not hard to do that. But we didn't work with filtering at all, so basically that is why I wish to add the filtering also inside of this table, so we could have a table with a bit more functionality to it. So first of all, what I will do is go above my table here to create my own, input field. I will create here math form field element, and I can set the appearance of this math form field to be fill or standard. Let's go with the standard, and you should know if you wish to use math form field, you need to import a proper module, which we already did earlier in this series. But inside of this math form field, we can specify the form field. In our example, that will be just the input field for our search. So here I can first of all use math label element, and label can say search or a filter, and then after this math label I will use HTML5 input element. We don't need the type for this to be text, but we can leave it as it is. We need to use math input here, so material could know to work with this input field, and for example I will just add the placeholder of search here as well. Now what is important for this input field, I will break this down into multiple lines as I wish to pass another thing here. So what is important here, we can listen for a key up event. So basically whenever we enter a key inside of this input, we can listen for that enter of a key and every time do something. In my example here, we wish to, search through our table. So I will create a method here called search. Now inside of this search, we also need to grab our, search term. So I will also add a local reference here of search term, and I will pass that search term local reference here and use a value on it to get the value from the search term from my input field. Now let's create this method in our TypeScript. Down below in my TypeScript I will create search, which expects some search term to be passed here, which is a string, and here this will return void. We don't wish to return anything here, but what I wish to do is just to console.log my search term like this, so search term, so we could double check if we are truly getting that search term. Also one thing here, I realized just that I mistyped here math input, it must be math capitalized input. Now in my browser I can start typing into my filter here, and we can see all of those values on our right side in my console, which basically we are definitely getting that search term from our input field. At this point we can by this search term filter our data here, but that will be a bit different here. As I don't wish to create this manually, this filtering, it will be too much work, I can use material to do that for me. But for that we need to set up that a bit differently as well. First of all, next to these periodic elements, we must have a, data source for a material itself. So I will create a property of data source here, and I will set the type of it to be math table data source, which must be imported here at the top from @angular/material/table. This math table data source will accept the type of any. Here you can also specify your own model of the data. I won't create that interface right now because this is just the tutorial, but it is smart to use a proper model here, not the any type. I'm getting the error because initially I don't have a value, so I can use just the exclamation point at the end to kinda allow this data source to be created without any value. Because in my constructor here, what I will do is set up this data source to be equal new math table data source, and here now we must pass our table that will be here we must pass our data that will be used as this data source data. So I will use this periodic elements now that we have. At this point we can filter our data from our data source. This data source now, as it is the instance of math table data source, it doesn't just hold data, but on it I can use this .data source and I have different values. I have some filter data, page data, order data methods, but I also have methods, well, properties for sort, paginator, and so on. One of the properties that I will use is the filter itself. If you pass a filter directly to this data source, it will automatically filter the data for you. So here what I can do is set this filter to be equal to my search term. What I will make sure is that this search term is trimmed, so I will use trim method, so I don't have any empty space, and I will also use two lowercase to make sure that all of my entries that I need to filter through are lowercase, which is much easier to filter through. And that is it. Just the last thing now is that now in our table HTML file of it, we cannot use periodic elements to render our data, because these periodic elements doesn't know about that filter. So what we need to use here for our data source is our data source property that we created, which will hold all of our data from our periodic elements, and also it will hold these additional properties like filter, sort, and so on. And with that we should be pretty much over. So in my local host, if I would try to search for something, for example hydrogen, well, I am getting that hydrogen by my search term. I can remove this. We can see that it will search backwards as well. I can also use oxygen here it is, or neon, here it is, so our search also works. And this should be pretty much it about this tutorial, guys. If you have any questions, be sure to ask those down below and I will surely answer you. One thing before I close this video, you should know that next to the YouTube I am also having a Skillshare profile where I am publishing new courses, constantly as well. So you can visit my Skillshare profile, which you can find down in the description of this video. You will also have an affiliate link down in the description, so you could get a free entry into the Skillshare. And here you can select one of my courses. Through all of my courses, we are creating a real-time applications with variety of different technologies. So if you are into Angular, you can create this to-do app with Angular and Firebase as well. But next to Angular, you will also have different courses for example, creating a weather app with Node.js or creating a Bootstrap 5 landing page fully professionally. So make sure to use that link down in the description of this video and sign up for your own Skillshare. But this is pretty much it. Thank you all for watching, guys. And if you liked what you saw, please click like and subscribe as I'm posting new content weekly. Thank you once again, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.